So to do your 45, 45, 90, you're going to set this table up every single time. You can label it the leg hypotenuse, or you can label it the 45, 45, 90. Okay? And then you will always do the ratios underneath them. Okay? We use the ratios from here. So instead of the 1, okay, we're going to do x for both legs, and then we do x times the square root of 2 for our hypotenuse. Okay. We're going to start with example 2. Here. We can see that that is an isosceles right triangle because we have our tick marks, right? So we know that that's a 45, 45, 90. And so what you will do is you're going to focus on what they gave you. They gave us the side length of 5. Is that side a leg or hypotenuse? It is a leg. So you take that value of that leg and you put it in your little table, just like that. This is isosceles, right? So what's the other leg?
5.
It's also 5. And then the hypotenuse would be what? Look at your 5 square root of 2. And there's your hypotenuse. So your table is kind of, think about your table as you're just subbing in. Once you have that x value, then you're just subbing that value in wherever you see the x. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at example 1. We're going to start the same way. We can see that this is an isosceles, right? They gave us 12. Okay. Is 12 a leg or hypotenuse? Hypotenuse. So we're going to go to that. Yes, thank you. We're going to go to that column, title hypotenuse, and we're going to put the 12 in it. Okay, notice that the square root of 2 is missing. But remember at the beginning, I told you that these ratios will hold always. Okay? There is a square root of 2 in the ratio. Therefore, if it doesn't show up in the hypotenuse, he's going to show up over here in the legs. Okay? And I'm fixing to show you how that happens. So we can't look at this 12 and find the x. I mean, we can't just say, well, I think that x is, 8, whatever. We can't do that, right? So how do we usually find x? We solve for it, right? So we're going to come over here to the side, and we're going to set the 12 equal to that ratio of x times the square root of 2. Okay. You're going to solve this just like you would solve a normal equation. If you were a linear equation, if you were solving a linear equation for x, what would be your first step? How are you going to get x by itself? Okay, let's come up here. Let's say we have an 8 equal to a 4x. How would you solve for x? By dividing by the 4. Okay, it's the same thing. So let's come back down here. I'm going to divide by, what is x being multiplied with?
5.
Square root of 2. Okay. So that'll give us our x. Okay. All right. However, your square root of 2 is an irrational number, right? If you put that into the calculator, you're going to get what? A decimal that never ends. And you guys learned in Algebra 1 that that's an irrational number, okay? Irrational numbers cannot stay in the denominator, because you really can't find the answer, right? It's just going to keep going on and on and on. Just like 0. We can't have 0 in the denominator because we don't know how many zeros are in numbers, right? So what we have to do is we have to get rid of the square root. Okay, now let's think about this. If you wanted to get rid of a square root, what operation would you perform on it? What would undo it? By squaring it. Exactly. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to square the square root. Now remember, when you square a number, essentially what are you doing? You are multiplying it by itself, right? So that means we're going to come over here to our problem, and we're going to multiply that square root of 2 by himself. If I multiply by that square root of 2 in the denominator, I have to do it in the numerator as well, so I don't change the problem. It still has the same value. Now, let's see what we have. So now in the numerator, I have 12 times the square root of 2 over, all right, so here's what's going to happen. If I take a square root of 2 and I multiply it by a square root of 2, that gives me the square root of what? 4. And what's the square root of 4?
2.
2. So this is going to be over 2. Okay. So now I got rid of my irrational number, and I replaced it with a 2, which is a rational number, right? So this is what we call rationalizing the denominator. That little square root of 2, you can't touch him. He's irrational. Okay? But you do have a 12 over a 2. They're just your normal numbers. 12 over 2 could be simplified to 6 over 1. Right? And what were we finding again? What were we solving for? X. So there's your X. So you're going to go back to your table and you're going to put it in. For both of your legs. Okay. Now, I want you to take a minute here to see. We started with a hypotenuse of 12, and we ended up with the legs being a 6 times the square root of 2. Do you kind of maybe see a little bit of a connection there between what the legs ended up being as opposed to what you started with? Yes? No? Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to have you practice these. Remember the leg. The legs are the x, yes. And the hypotenuse is your x square root of 2. Now, for these 3 problems that you're going to do, you're going to set the table up for each one of them. Now, the other thing I want you to do, I do not care what x and y are down here, okay? I want you to ignore the x and y in all of them completely. All I want to see is the table filled out, okay? All right. Okay, so let's take a look. 8 is a leg, so we're going to put that over here. So I know this is also 8, and then my hypotenuse will be the 8 times the square root of 2. We go to our second one. 25 is also a leg, so we put that here. Our second one is also 25, and then we have 25 times the square root of 2. Our 19, that is the hypotenuse across from the 90. So we don't know what x is, right? We just can't pull a number out. So here's where we have to solve it. Okay, what's our first step? Come on. divide by the square root, and then we're going to do what? We divide by it, and then we multiply by it, top and bottom. So what do we have? We have in the numerator 19 times the square root of 2 over, what's in the denominator now?
2.
Just the 2. Okay, remember that's our x. 19 is odd, so just leave it. You're done. A lot of you changed it to the decimal. Don't, just leave it like that and bring it on over. So 19 square root of 2 over 2 for both your legs.